Hi, I'm Nicolette Gibson, Executive Director of MOCAPE, the Missouri chapter for the Council of American Private Education.
My name is Al Freeman, and I currently serve as president of MOCAPE. I serve also as director of Lutheran schools for the Missouri district.
Our private schools are really stepping up to the challenges presented by the pandemic and the shutdown of our schools.
There has been a great transition by our schools, by our teachers, going from in-person education in what we're familiar with and used to changing very quickly to delivering education in an online format and at home format. What never did change, though, was the care and concern and the love expressed to the students. It's been amazing as our teachers do that in an environment they're not used to, but they still are bringing learning, caring, growth, all those things that make non-public schools a special environment.
So it was really an amazing thing to watch on my end, both as a parent and as a part of our community, just how quickly people got into action. It was really remarkable. I think what touched me the most were our schools that serve underprivileged populations of students, how they reached out immediately to make sure that basic needs were being met, that students had the food that they need, that families had the supplies that they need. Teachers are reaching out and making sure that they stay connected with their students. I've also been really excited to see how much teletherapy has been available to our students. So our counselors making themselves available to families to give that support to our students.
Many of our schools turned into food distribution points immediately to help families, and great to see just again what our schools are known for: the caring, the passion, um, the seeing what they can do for community, for families, for students, and that transition. The ability to alter delivery so quickly is just amazing what our schools were able to do.
Our schools are located in urban areas and suburban areas and rural areas. We have large schools, small schools, and it seemed like the one common theme throughout was just everybody's ability to be flexible and learn new things. What teachers do for online learning is very different than what they're doing in the classroom, and without a lot of those same rewards that they get. So, our teachers enjoy being with their students and they enjoy that connectivity. And I think it's been really challenging for them to prepare lessons and to do all of those things that, they're used to doing, but in a new format, but not really having that connection with their students. We're an innovative people. And I think that this has really shined a light on, how innovative we can be and creative we can be in meeting the needs of our kids. So, Al, let's transition a little bit and talk about some of the challenges that this pandemic has presented to our schools beyond just, closing and moving to online learning. There are some other challenges. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
With the challenges that we've seen with our non-public schools is challenges of financial instability that this brings. It's the challenges of enrollment. It's the challenges of trying to figure out programs with the CARES Act and PPP and some of these other programs that are coming from the federal government to provide for sustainability and continue employment. Obviously, we can't deliver education without revenue from tuition coming in, with donors and families, and what has happened to the economy immensely impacts all of our schools. So a lot of the dollars to operate schools are not coming from tuition revenue, but rather support from other entities or donors that add to that as well. Tuition makes up just a portion of the overall revenue that's coming in. So all of that is hit at one time. As our schools move forward, our concerns are around solidifying enrollment, preparations for next school year, and what that will look like in terms of finances coming in, financial support from parishes and congregations, from donors that perhaps have seen their stock market investments plunge a great deal, and the unknown that brings, and how do we solidify our schools to make sure that we're able to do what we do each and every day.
Well, when we talk about, families facing financial hardships, we definitely don't want to add stress to families right now by having to transition students out of our schools because they can't afford the tuition. And so at a time where our families are most in need, as you've said, our churches have been closed now for for several weeks. That impacts contributions to the church. Foundations had to cancel their fundraisers. Our schools had to cancel spring fundraisers as well.
Mhm.
And so there isn't a lot of reserve because our schools run on a pretty tight budget as it is. They don't typically have a lot in reserve to begin with. And we make a lot happen with every dollar, but unfortunately, there's just not that same reserve or cushion for our schools. And then when we have families coming and saying, we as a family have been hit, economically through job loss or wage loss, and our ability to pay tuition, it is going to be a really challenging time to try to keep our learning community intact.
Yes, and it is a matter of financial sustainability long term. Most of our schools keep the tuition rates fairly low. It's not what covers the cost to educate a child. So there's so many layers to that financial puzzle. So all of our schools will have to look at that and continue to seek ways to financially help families to continue to attend our schools.
I think the average tuition for a K-8 school, private school in our state right now is between $3,000 and $5,000, which is nowhere near the cost to educate a student. The cost to educate students for the state for in a public school is around $11,000. Sometimes people have this misconception that people that attend private schools are wealthy and they pay a high tuition rate. And sometimes that is the case, but more often than not, we have students who are paying a modest tuition to offset the cost of their education. In some of our schools, we still have tithe-based tuition, where if you're supporting your church through your tithe, then your children can attend to that private school without additional tuition cost. We serve people from all economic statuses, from all backgrounds and walks of life. And it's not just an elite group of people that are attending our private schools, but people from every community.
Families who are choosing the best school fit for their child and for their family. We aim to provide that ability to choose the best possible environment for their child, so the child can grow and flourish and use all of their talents and abilities that they've been given. So there is a school choice that's out there, and you can find a school that meets your needs, the needs of your child, the needs of your family, and we're all working together, right? I mean, that's the thing about MoCAPE. We are here to work with families. We're here to work with schools. We're here to provide the best choices and the best options for families.
If somebody's watching this and they want to support our schools, now is the time to do so, because our scholarships and our schools are going to need that additional support. What we are anticipating is a decrease in enrollment, and that will impact our communities. It will impact those students' lives to leave their school, but will also impact our schools' abilities to stay open.
It impacts public schools too, right? Because if our students leave, if our families leave our non-public schools for the public school, all of a sudden it increases the cost to those public schools as well.
Let's talk a little bit about, other than tuition costs, some of the other costs that schools are going to be dealing with as they continue to work through this pandemic. Right now, our schools are we've shut down pretty quickly and we're reopening much slower. We want to be cautious in how we reopen summer programs, early childhood centers, and even as we're looking into the fall, what that will look like.
There are a lot of unknowns. Some of the tools that we're using right now that companies have stepped up and offered for free, like Zoom, to help out teachers at this point in time, probably will not be free next year. The schools will have to figure out a way, how do we pay for these resources if we have to transition once again to an e-learning format or at home modified learning format in some way.
So many companies stepped up and wanted to provide whatever they could to help families at this time, but long term we are looking at a situation where we may either have extended periods of time where schools are shut down, or modified schedules where students are partially at home and partially at school so that they minimize the number of students in the building at any point in time. We're still looking at a lot of different options on how schools are going to manage this. Those technology resources are definitely at some point going to cost, and we need to start preparing for that. Cleaning our schools and the increased cleaning that's going to be necessary when we do reopen, whether that's increased staff to maintain those cleaning standards for our students to keep our students and teachers safe, increased training for our teachers on how to keep themselves and their students safe. As our community continues to deal with this, we may have teachers or students that are out of school for extended periods of time. So we're looking at an increase in need for substitute teachers and ways to help students if they're gone from school for extended periods of time as well.
And the need for technology to perhaps even record lessons as students are gone from the classroom, and delivery, even if it's not in an e-learning format, caring for those students who could be gone. Professional development. I think a lot of people will be doing professional development on e-learning and how to deliver in this new format in an effective way. There is possibility of rolling closures coming in the fall, but we have to be ready for that. So there's an expense of that as well, and an ongoing expense, because you don't do professional development in 3 days before the school year starts and call it good.
I think we also need to really keep in mind our students who are at risk and make sure that we have plans in place to help remediate. We want to make sure that that gap doesn't widen, that we make sure that they get whatever supports they need as we move forward into the next school year to keep up and to regain any loss that they had over this time. All of our students and parents and teachers have been deeply impacted by this, and there is going to be an increase in anxiety. And how do we prepare for that and prepare our schools to be a place where we can support teachers and students and families and give them the cushion and the love and support and tools that they need to really effectively deal with all of the many emotions that they're going to be feeling as we return in whatever capacity.
Which is an increased cost factor as well.
Absolutely.
A lot of our schools will be looking to bring in individuals that are therapists or school counselors and such to care for teachers and the students and the community as well.
People are aware that this is impacting our children. For some of them, this has been a very lonely time. You know, if they don't have siblings at home, or if they weren't, blessed with those playmates that they live with, and they have parents that are working, this can be a really, lonely time for them. But I think that technology has allowed us to stay connected, and our schools have provided a safe environment for our children to connect with each other and with the trusted adults in their life. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done in that regard.
I think our schools have also done a great job of reaching out to teachers, teacher appreciation signs that we see in yards, and finding unique ways to celebrate what they do.
I think that people are becoming more aware that our teachers are educators, but they're educated in educating. And so it's not something that you can just necessarily pick up and do, but it really is a matter of years of training and continued professional development that allow our teachers to reach our students in the ways that they do, and really to ensure their successes as learners and to provide that community. I just don't think we can get away from the fact that that's what our schools are. They're communities. They're communities for our students. And hopefully our kids have felt that love and support, and our teachers have felt that, although not always perfect, in the best ways that we can manage right now in this really difficult time.
I've seen some amazing work by the teachers. I know that I've seen online autopsies done for anatomy classes. I've seen printing of PPE equipment delivered to different agencies, whether it be medical centers or fire stations, whatever's the case. A lot of our schools have been doing that with their STEM programs. The creativity abounds. I'm so amazed and impressed. It's again, it shows the bottom line, the caring, the relationships, the concern for students to have an educational experience and to do it in a new way.
I think the other thing that we were able to do because of our flexibility is provide for our students with academic needs. I know that many of my schools, especially here in Kansas City, we have a large number, 10 to 12% of our student population has an identified special education need. And we were immediately able to jump into action and figure out, new ways to make sure that those students had the learning environment that they needed, the learning support that they needed, whether it was through paraprofessionals zooming in and working with them via teleconference that way to make sure that their work was done. For some of our students with more significant needs like Down syndrome, teachers were putting together packets for, here are games that you can play with your family that will keep you learning. Here are things that really were applicable to them, as opposed to trying to have one of those students sit down on a Zoom and continue their learning, but really just being able to be flexible and know that we could meet the needs of each of our students. Maybe, again, not perfectly, but in a way that helped them to continue their learning throughout this time.
Something our schools excel at, personalized learning.
Yeah.
Knowing each child, knowing the needs and caring for those needs. And again, it's never perfect, but we're always approaching trying to meet excellence at all times.